All right.
During this brief video, you will learn how to effectively present support group guidelines and how to ineffectively present them. Hi, everyone. My name's Greg. I'll be serving you as facilitator for the next few weeks. I'm on my own healing journey from childhood trauma and abortion loss. With this being our first week, we're going to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. The first thing, it's important to be comfortable for the 90 minutes or so that we're going to be together each week. And so if you need to grab a drink of water or go to the bathroom, no, that's totally fine. Just excuse yourself and we'll see you when you get back. Next, I want to go over the support group guidelines. You should each have a copy of the guidelines, and I'll start and read the first, and then we can take turns reading the rest after that, okay? Mm-hmm. Also, we'll save time for questions at the end. Sound good?
Okay. Yep.
Right on, let's go after it. All right, support group guidelines. The first one is maintain confidentiality. It is essential that we create and maintain a safe space for group members to share personal thoughts, experiences, and opinions. What is said in the group stays in the group. This includes not repeating what was said in group or talking about members in places where others may overhear. For virtual groups, facilitators will explain the confidentiality procedures the group will follow. These often include keeping Zoom video on and audio connected, using headphones to ensure audio is only heard by participants and not recording group sessions. There may be options for participants who want anonymity. Now that's maintain confidentiality. Do we have any questions on that before we move on?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Who would like to read the first 3 points on respect boundaries?
I can go.
Awesome, thank you.
So the first one is actively listen to what others say, speak with compassion and without judgment. The next one reads, allow space for others to speak. This includes letting one person speak at a time, holding silence to keep a speaker, holding silence to give a speaker time to think and share, not interrupting and allowing everyone to have a turn to share. And then the third one says support others without trying to fix. This includes not giving advice, not rescuing, like giving a tissue or a hug, supplying an answer for someone. These can interfere with their healing process.
Awesome, thank you, Heidi. Anybody like to read the next 3?
I can do that. Yeah, I'll go.
Awesome.
When sharing your opinion, refrain from trying to persuade others to agree with your opinion. Differences of opinion are welcome and respected. Keep your sharing focused on your own thoughts and feelings. Use I or me statements. Do not discuss members who are absent.
Thank you, Karen. Before we move on, does anybody have questions about respecting boundaries?
I do. I have a couple. Sorry.
Oh, great.
I don't know what actively listen means.
Okay, so that's a great question. To actively listen is to be fully engaged with the person speaking. So we're not thinking about what we're going to say next or how we'd like to respond. It's truly giving them the respect and the honor of listening to them share their thoughts and feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds to me kind of like being present in the moment.
Exactly like that. Yeah, well put.
Okay. And then this is one that I've experienced before because I've been in support groups before. I don't know how to say this delicately, but I mean, I find curse words offensive. I used to live a life where that was the only speech that I ever spoke, was bad language. And so I get kind of triggered by that when people get really graphic or speak in that kind of language. Is that disrespecting my boundaries or is that something completely different?
So again, great question. And thank you for sharing openly about your experience with that. I know we don't directly address coarse language in the guidelines, but if a member were to use coarse language, that would be something the facilitator will want to address directly and immediately in a kind way, in a caring way. But if it became a habit and became a problem, that would be something the facilitator would want to then address on the side in a more stern fashion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how would you know that I'm triggered? I mean, can I like private chat you or something so that you know that what's you would probably be able to tell by my demeanor anyway, because I would probably shut down completely. But like if you're not noticing or if a facilitator's not noticing, how do we get their attention?
Yeah, sending a private message to the facilitator is a great way to share that you've been triggered and to let the facilitator know there's something that needs to be addressed. My encouragement to all facilitators is to nip that in the bud. If coarse language enters the group or the conversation, to go ahead and take it upon yourself to address that situation. So, but yes, Aaron, if you don't feel like it's being addressed, that or anything else, I would encourage you strongly to just private message a facilitator and share your concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking those questions. So now we want to talk about your healing and to the group. First of all, attend each session, show up on time, complete all homework and journaling, and participate in the group discussion. Share from your heart and let down walls. This takes time and trust and may be easier for some people and more challenging for others. Next, trust in the process. Everyone grieves a bit differently, so don't compare your progress to somebody else's. Please note that the support group does not replace professional therapy. If you are currently in therapy, we recommend that you notify your therapist and that they support your participation in this group. Next is each group session is valuable to your personal healing and to the group support. Your facilitator will inform the group of the number of allowed absences. If you miss a session, notify your facilitator ahead of time and follow your group's protocol, which may include scheduling time to make up that session. And lastly, do not use drugs or alcohol while preparing for or participating in group sessions. Drugs and alcohol can interfere with your ability to feel and grieve and can create an unsafe space for others. So if you need help in that area, please contact your facilitator outside of the group, and your facilitator can connect you with the help you need and deserve. Do we have any questions on that before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thanks for reading them.
Okay, so for our group and purposes, we are a 6-week session. So we're going to allow one miss. And if you do miss a session, please notify your facilitator ahead of time. And you and I can make it up one-on-one at some point during the week. It's really important that we take advantage of all 6 sessions for you and for the health of the group. Each week, we're going to take a quick look at the support group guidelines. Don't worry, it's not going to be as long as it was here. But it's very important that we kind of refresh our memories every week with the expectations and the boundaries of the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Terrific. Hi, everyone. My name's Greg. I'll be leading this group for the next 6 weeks or so, and we have some guidelines to go over quick. So here we go. Maintain confidentiality, right? So don't talk about other people. Don't say what other people say, especially the people outside the group. You know, you guys get it. Respect boundaries. So actively listen. You know, whatever that means to you is fine. But don't try to fix folks, you know, general stuff. You guys understand boundaries, right? And commit to healing in the group. So try to make every session and try to be serious about doing the sessions. Again, pretty common stuff we all get. Anyone have any questions? No? Great. All right. Awesome. Let's get started with the first week.
All right. So in those 2 role plays, the first one we did how to present the group guidelines the right way. And the second one we did the wrong way. Now, what I want to say here before we get into questions is it is incredibly important to set the expectation for the group. And that's what these guidelines do. They're not rules, they're guidelines. And they let each member know what's expected of them and what they can expect to experience while in each session through your group, whether it's 6 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever. Without them, number one, people don't know where the rail is, right? They have no idea what they're supposed to do, what they can't do. Karen asked that great question. Hey, offensive language or coarse language offends me. What do I do? Well, without reading through them and giving participants in the very beginning the opportunity to ask those questions and get clarification, her healing experience may be tainted if somebody starts using language that's inappropriate or something that. So it's really important to set the expectation by doing the guidelines the appropriate way. I also mentioned to the group, hey, every week we're going to touch on these just real quick, just so they know this is something we need to be aware of. And then the second video, obviously, I ran right through it with no concern for the group participants, for their understanding, and really no respect at all for the guidelines themselves. And I think we can see how that, all of us can see how that would be incredibly poor way to do it, because it wouldn't be very effective. Heidi, you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think, Greg, what I've learned, just as facilitating like each and every one of you, I've done it without support group guidelines and I've done it with. And what I've learned, even for myself, it provides me guidance. It provides me boundaries. There's been groups I've led and I've just like, it's a small group. I don't really need to do it this time around. And that's when I can reflect. And it was the most discombobulated group that I led. There wasn't commitment. I felt, unequipped to lead some conversations. And so what I really learned from having these when I'm facilitating, it's support for me as a facilitator. It allows me to have my boundaries, my settings. And then it just allows me to be my best. And it's not about perfection, y'all. That's the really neat thing here. It's impossible to show up and hit every one of these and be this amazing, perfect facilitator. It's about having the guidelines and having that ownership. And there's been times I've put my foot in my mouth and I've started rescuing somebody. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry you went through that. Is there anything I can do for you? That must have been awful for you. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm really sorry. I just didn't even let you have your space right here. So that's what we get to do with these support group guidelines, at least for myself. It allows me to show up as my best. And sometimes it does feel repetitive, but the really neat thing, we know what repetitive does. It creates just a stronger place for us and direction. And many of these clients they've never had that. They've never had boundaries. They've never had healthy examples of that. And so not only do I get to show up at my best, we get to show them a really different way of walking through some really nasty stuff. So that's just been my experience, Greg.
Well put. I love that. Oh, and by the way, everybody, so somebody had asked a question during the video about where they could get a copy of those guidelines. One of our team members, Michelle, has put that link. It's found in our resource library. Michelle went ahead and put the link in the chat. So if you want a copy of those to use yourself, to modify, to review, whatever, click that link. You can download it, print it.
Yeah.
We'll have an opportunity for questions now before we go into the next video. If anybody has questions or comments about the first video or group guidelines as a concept.
Yeah. And I'm having a hard time putting my email in chat, but we'll figure that out. And no questions too simple, guys. For me, I would really love to hear if this is something that you all do. And if you have done it, what's been some of the pros and cons? So let's hear from you how it's going. We're here to build relationships and share our experiences. So we will love to hear from you guys.
And if you don't use them, share that. Help me understand.
Yeah.
So we know from our respondents that there were a handful of facilities that don't use them at all. And I'm just curious how you got there.
And if you don't have questions, no worries. Greg and I will just keep filling and talking, and we're here for you guys.
Hi, Sue.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for doing this. And we just tweaked our guidelines, and we're using a lot of what you have, and appreciate it and doing it. It makes things, like you said, Heidi, run so smoothly because you can go back to it. And if somebody's out of line, you can say, remember when you committed to it. Because we went a step further and kind of have a commitment form or have them just say, yes, I commit to these guidelines, because the whole plan is to create a safe space for you. And so our intention this year is to really help them understand this is for your protection and safety, and then just, you know, feeling heard. And it's funny you said you inserted that the curse words, because it happened to me last night in group, and it's not on my guideline list. So I'm going to add something about that, or I'm going to bring it up because I can tell that could be a trigger, and I never thought about that before. So thank you for including that. And the other thing I love is what you did is you had everybody speak. And I think it's very important in a group, because everybody, you know, most times people don't know each other. So to hear their own voice speaking safe words, it's not their words, and just reading aloud like you did, I think starts the interaction, and it just creates the, I don't know, the environment. So thank you.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sue. It's a great foundation builder
Yeah.
to get us all off on the right foot. Now another, you're mentioning about course language, and that was Karen's idea, and I thought it was brilliant too, Sue, because you know, a lot of us operate in a Christian space, and we run groups, and sometimes people need to know that the expectation where we're at today, especially when it's virtual. All right, I'm sitting in my den, and maybe I feel a little more relaxed. So it's important to let people know where that boundary is. I agree.
Yeah. Thanks, Sue.
Marlene?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm getting ready to start my second group on Tuesday, so I'm pumped. But our first group, we did use the guidelines, and what I really loved when I first went through the group myself, I really struggled with the no rescuing part. I thought that seemed kind of harsh, but leading your own group and explaining to the ladies, like, we need to really get comfortable with sitting with our emotions and really allowing ourselves to feel all of those things that we have suppressed for so long, and being able to explain that further to them, I think it's so helpful to. And it is uncomfortable, right? To sit around and watch somebody cry their heart out and you want to comfort them, but it is so important. And I think, like, explaining that to the ladies, like, this is for you to really be able to fully heal. And if somebody's coming in and comforting us and doing all the things, it doesn't allow us to fully express that. But I think that was really beneficial for the group to hear. And I also like both, like, mentioning the curse words. I haven't dealt with that personally, but I do think it's something important to bring up at group, just to prevent it from happening. So that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good stuff, Marlene. You know, it's funny. I remember saying, you let somebody sit long enough, they fix their own problems, you know? And so with that rescuing, we can break that, you know. They could, you know, sometimes it's really uncomfortable to have 30 seconds of silence. And I think Lisa's done that with y'all on these webinars. She's like, okay, 30 seconds and we're not going to do anything. And it's uncomfortable. But what's really neat is what comes from that. So that rescuing, and for those that do this in person, you know, rescuing is getting up and handing somebody a tissue. It's, you know, patting somebody on the leg. It's rubbing their back when they're sharing a really hard story. And so what that looks like in person and virtual can be different. But I remember Lisa always saying she puts a box of tissues in the middle of the room. And she lets everybody know they're here who needs it. If they're here, please get up and get it. And so we have to teach these things. So that's a great perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marlene.
Yeah, I used to be a leader for a group called Celebrate Recovery for years. And a phrase was battered around. I don't know if it originated there, but that's where I first heard it, but battered around a lot. And that was work your own program, or don't work my program. What you learn is over time is that if I'm in any kind of recovery group as a facilitator, participant, new, it's my 12th time, whatever, I've got my own junk to work on, right? And so part of in my mind, what I think about with that particular guideline is, if I'm focused on comforting you, healing you, making you feel better, giving you suggestions, whatever. What I'm not doing is what I'm there to do, which is work on my own junk. And if I have trouble resisting the urge to go make you feel better, then that just shows me that I've got more junk to work on. I've struggled with anxiety and codependency my whole life. So seeing somebody in pain and wanting to fix it for them, right? That's a sort of a natural propensity for me. So, but yeah, that's good stuff. And in a video in a minute, Marlene, after it, I'm going to share a story about that really happened with a guy that used some coarse language and how that was handled. So hopefully that'll be of value.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions or comments? Heidi, were you getting ready to say something?
No, sorry. I'm trying to get prepared to share my screen again. It's gonna work.
Right on. All right. If we don't have any more questions, Heidi will queue up the next video. This video is going to talk about how to handle a guideline that needs addressing. So the expectations have been set. Now we've got somebody not following one of the guidelines, and sort of how do you handle it? So whenever you're ready, Heidi, let her rip.
So today we spent most of our time on key 3. And it's important to remember that we can only effectively give forgiveness when we get in touch with our anger, right? And so to get in touch with our anger, I think of a quote from Mark Twain. I'm sorry, let's pause real quick. Hey, Heidi, I noticed you're talking with someone off camera. Is everything okay?
Yeah, my mom just had a question, but yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay, right on. Well, let's remember that it's important to respect and maintain the privacy and confidentiality of each group member, okay? So if you want to use headphones, that's all right. Or if you want to go to a separate room, that's okay too. Do you need to take a minute, Heidi, and just go grab some headphones or move quick?
No, she was just asking what I wanted for lunch, but I guess hang on, let me just go shut my door. Hang on. Hang on.
Okay.
Okay, the door is shut.
Awesome. Thanks for your help on that, Heidi. I really appreciate it. All right, now back into key 3.
So in that video, Heidi did a terrific job of being irritated with me for setting a boundary, right? You could tell she didn't want to. It's like, well, it's just my mom.
Yeah.
A couple things to note there. As the well, we'll just say the facilitator in the video, I tried to handle it in a very healthy way, but a very firm way. Like, we need to address this. I'm not calling you out. I'm not showing a lot of emotion towards you. That's just something we need to do. Even when Heidi got irritated, I didn't feel the need to talk about that. Let me help you feel better about it. When she complied, I just simply thanked her and moved on with the meeting.
Yep. Yeah, I think we want to make people not feel bad, but in the end, I have to work through my own junk, and it's respecting people, and that's what's really neat about, as a facilitator, we can take it personal, which can be super, super hard. But at the same time, when we give the structure, that's what they need. And that's what I need, and so as a facilitator, do I want to call something out that's happening? No, Greg and I have our own experiences. I was leading a reproductive loss group, and I had a baby show up on camera with my group. And I was like, I'm just going to ignore the elephant in the room. I'm just going to keep leading. And this sweet mama's going to have her baby on camera while my other mamas are here grieving the loss of their unborn child. And we're all good. And so what happened after that, it spiraled out of control. The one participant reached out to me. She was a hot mess. The one that had the baby there, I mishandled it. She got really, she felt like she was really bad and did something really bad. And so when we ignore it, for myself, it created a lot of extra noise, and I lost one of my participants from it. And so, and then what led to that was my team, which was amazing. We had a really great Let's Support Heidi. And then what came from that, y'all, is my team met with me weekly until my group was done to help me build my confidence back up. Because that can knock us down as a facilitator. And so again, for me, you know, there's not a set guideline for not having children on camera. But hello, you know, hey, there's a little one on camera. Mindy, you know, what's going on with you today? You know, and then just saying, you know, if this doesn't work for you today, it may be best if you know, we can connect off camera afterwards. You know, and so there's not something for everything we're going to walk across, guys, but able to talk about things is going to be really important. So that was my big moment. That was Karen, who's on our team, she was the one that gave me weekly support because it knocks you down a little bit, but we can always get built back up. That's what's really neat.
And it, you know, and that's a great example. And for me, the example that came to mind when we were putting this together had to do with course language. I was in an in-person men's group at my church about, I don't know, 17 or 18 years ago now. And the group was being led by one of the board members of the church, a leader in the church, an old guy, you know, he's about my age now, back then. Anyway, and we had a guy show up that we hadn't been there before. You could tell he's really rough around the edges when he got there, right? And we had food and whatever, and we all sat down and we started talking. And about 20 minutes in, this guy finally decided to share. And I was so excited for him. During his share time, he said a couple of cuss words. I blankety, blankety, blank. He immediately caught himself and went, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. Pardon me on that." And then went to keep talking. Now, he made a mistake and caught himself. Okay. The guy leading the group immediately jumped in and said, "No, I won't pardon that. You're in the house of God." And he went on this rant about how horrible it was and what a sin it was that he had used such language in the presence of the Lord and blah, 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 blah. When the meeting ended, I pulled him aside. Now, keep in mind, back then I'm a 30-year-old guy or whatever I was, 35, talking to an elder in my church, and I pulled him aside and I said, "You shouldn't have done that." And he said, "Well, you'll learn when you get older." And I said, "No, what he just did is this guy that came here because he needed healing and was probably really insecure about coming through the door in the first place will never be back." The elder took it far enough to tell me I was wrong, and then got another member of the board to come and have a conversation with me about addressing it. It turned into this big thing. Guess what, though, folks? The guy never came back. When you take somebody who's broken and wounded and trying their best to figure out what a pathway to some kind of healing or peace might look like, and when they finally open up, and I don't know about women, I think it's a universal thing, but certainly with men, when you finally get a man to open up and then you shame and humiliate him in front of a bunch of other people, not only have you not helped him heal, you've actually hurt him.
Yeah.
And you can probably tell, almost 20 years later, when I think about that night, it still bothers me.
Yeah.
So there's a proper way to address issues and a wrong way to address issues. And Heidi's right. Sometimes you need support from somebody else in your organization. Like, look, I'm really having a tough time with this participant. The last Keys in Hope and Healing I did that ended a few weeks ago. We had a guy that dropped a couple words he shouldn't have in the first session. I do the secular version of Keys to Hope and Healing when I facilitate. And I sent him a private chat right there and said, "Hey, bro, let's watch the language." Cool? Question mark. Never happened again.
Yeah. Yeah. And Greg, I think somebody has a great question. Hang on. Sorry, Sue. I'll be right back with you. So somebody asked, is there any cultural differences? So Beatrice, that's a great question. And I know I've talked about that, but especially serving our after-abortion clients, we do have to make allowances for cultural differences. So some may want to honor their losses in different ways that may be uncomfortable for us. Some may have different language than us, or they may even have been raised differently than us. So I think when you're looking at cultural differences, it's important to be open-minded to what that is. Someone who is raised in the projects versus somebody raised in a city, they may have different language. They may have never been told, hey, you don't say this word and that word, or it's disrespectful to talk to a woman like that. You don't talk to other women like that in group, man. You don't even say that kind of stuff. But we have to be really cautious, exactly with what Greg said. If we come on too hard, we're going to crush them, especially with cultural differences. And so that's where we need to stay curious. If somebody is showing repeat patterns, we need to learn what's going on. So staying curious in that moment, learning more about what they're going through. And that may be a phone call after a group. And that will let them know that they're seen and that they're heard. And so we can't be afraid to look at something that we think shouldn't be happening, and not even realize this could be a cultural thing. I'm white. I don't know what goes on with the Latin community, African American community, Hinduism. There's things that I don't know, but I, as a facilitator, have to stay curious if something keeps coming up. And so I think, Beatrice, I don't know if that answers your question, but we do need to stay curious with that. We have our support group guidelines, but sometimes the cultural differences may have to have a different approach. So that's how I will look at that. I don't know if Greg has anything else with that one. That was a great question, though, by the way.
No, and that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Over the years, I've been in groups that met downtown at homeless camps. And yeah, it's absolutely correct. You have to be conscious of the people you're with and
Yeah.
where they came from. And if you don't know what their cultural sort of parameters are from where they came from, then like Heidi said, just be curious, right?
Yeah.
We all came from whatever we came from. And I've heard hundreds of stories over the years from guys who talk about something that happened in their childhood, like that's just normal. And they had never had any idea at 30, 40, 50 years old that wasn't actually a normal thing that happened, right? So yeah, it's really important to be conscious of that stuff.
Great question. Sorry about cutting you off, Sue, but you have the floor.
Oh, no, I was just gonna agree with that, but the other thing is, rather than focus, I've done this where rather than focus on the person who's said the word, and you did it in your little demo earlier. The focus is that there's somebody here that had a hurtful past, a painful past where those words trigger something in them. So let's help this person over here. So that, okay, eyes off of me, because I just said this word, but we're helping someone, it's more about helping someone else. I think it.
Yeah, it's a balance, Sue, and that's what I'm hearing from you. Balance.
Thank you.
I remember the first time I shared my childhood trauma with a good friend. She comforted me in a way that nobody else could because of the language that, my language. She didn't shut it down. But there is a place where we have to stop stuffing it with language and finally learn how to have the conversation of what actually happened. But at times we have to remember we may be the first place these men and women share that story. And at times they're being placed back into the age that it happened. And so there is some patience to remember with these support group guidelines. But still, they're there because they're not the only ones sitting in that group. There may be 6 other people, and it's important to keep balance in that group. So yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that.
And Heidi, on that, it just made me think of this. It's also a big part of the reason that the don't try to fix anybody is in there. All we're here to do is to work them through whatever material we're working them through and to be supportive.
Yeah.
And that there have been many times when I've had to say, even if I thought I knew the answer because of something I read or, whatever, where I've had to say, you know what, that's a great question. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Are you seeing an individual therapist now? You are? Cool. That'd be something I talk to him or her about because I'm not a therapist. The guidelines help us stay in our lane too, right? And that's a big one. To to not feel like you have to have the answer. Sometimes, like Heidi said, the person talking just needs to know somebody finally heard them share whatever their pain is.
Yeah. Yeah, Greg, and I think you brought a really great point up. You know, as a facilitator, our role isn't to fix anybody. Our role is to facilitate a conversation. And I think if as a facilitator, if that's something that, man, I just want to help fix them, you know, reach out to us. Let's have a conversation how we can support you better. But we're all sitting here because we have a story. Each and every one of us, we have a story. And so if you're in this season of facilitating and you feel a shift, like, yeah, I'm asking, you know, questions that I probably should be asking, or these people are, you know, I'm asking a question, they talk forever, and then I give back. And if it feels off, please reach out to us. You know, our role as a facilitator is to facilitate the questions. And sometimes I know it can be hard. And we've shared this before, you know, we don't share, you should fix this, you should do that. It's this is what I experienced, and this is how it helped me, you know? And so just know you're not alone sitting here. We all facilitate, we've all done it. And just please know you're not alone, but our role is to lead. And so I think often there's been this line that goes back and forth with facilitating. And so I know on our after abortion line, we help set that standard for you guys. We share what a group means. We share what therapy would do and what a support group would do. So we do our best to provide the right clients referring to each and every one of you guys. And so yeah, so good. I'm done.
No, that's good stuff. Does anybody else have a question or a comment they want to share before we move on?
I do. That was
Yeah,
very,
go ahead.
that was really good what you just said, Heidi. About this is my story and this is what helped me. I volunteer at Pregnancy Solutions. And in fact, I spoke with you way back when I was going to start volunteering. It was when COVID was going on and my sister begged me not to, and you and I had that conversation and you said, well, we'll get to meet one day. Well, here we are. And I've been there now for over 2 years. So I would love to work with you guys. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, I just really like what you just said and I wrote it down because I share a lot about myself with my small group at DC3 and with the clients as a client advocate. And I can see in their eyes when I share my story, it changes the way they perceive what's going on, even in the conversation in that room, not just what their mess is, but that, you know, we look at people and think we have these preconceived notions. I don't care how hard we fight to not do that and not look at someone and think we know what they're all about, because that is the furthest thing from the truth. And when I was sharing with someone about the abortion healing study that I had to go through to become a client advocate, and I explained to her the stats that I learned, 43% of women of childbearing age have abortions. That's a lot, and which means somebody in that row in church has suffered this. And she raised her hand and I went, ugh. In a million years, I never would have expected that woman to be a victim of abortion, but she was, and it was a slap in my face. I had just gone through that healing program and I learned so much from it, and it changed my life and it changed my walk with the Lord, and it changed my ability to relate to these young women or older women like myself that have had this travesty and not known how to forgive themselves, even though God forgives them. I can't tell you how many times I heard that from other women like myself that are older that had an abortion in their 30s. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling. But what you said really slapped me. This is what I shared, and this is what I've been through, and this is what helped me, because I have a tendency to want to fix. I'm codependent as well, Greg. When you said that, I was like, ooh, it's been a story in my life. And you don't realize it until you go through something with a drug addict or an alcoholic or whatever the case may be. That's when you realize you've been that fixer all your life. So this is really good for me to hear, because that's going to be the hardest thing for me, facilitating a co-leading an abortion recovery group with Lisa at DC3. I'm really looking forward to it, but at the same time, this is so necessary for me. So anyway, I'll shut up now.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Linda. We appreciate it. And what Heidi said is 100%. I wrote a book for men to heal, Marriage Healing Book for Abortion. It's based on the 12 steps. Several times in the first 2 chapters, I say over and over and over, hey, this is just what I've learned. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an expert. This isn't the be in all end all. This is just a book, and it's not self-deprecation. It's just being honest and having self-awareness about where I'm at in my journey. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And here's what's really cool, y'all. I have 4 sons, 22 through 32. And I've started in the last couple of years doing that with them. Hey, Dad, what do you think I should do about da 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 da? Well, I don't know what you should do. But I was in a similar situation at 25. Here's what I did, or whatever, to relate and talk to them and ask them questions to get them thinking. But I wish to goodness when they were especially middle school age boys and high school age boys, I would have known better than to tell them, well, here's what you should do.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that, right? Raise your hand if you want someone to tell you what you need to do.
Right.
Some people do. I may raise my hand. I saw a few other. Greg, we have one more. We have another question if we want to do that real quick and then bounce to the next video. Does that feel okay?
Yep, let her rip.
So someone asked, Melissa had asked, have you ever had to remove someone from the group while group was going? I had to do that and think I likely could have handled it better, but I just couldn't get her attention and people were in the room, but it ultimately hurt her. Tried to reconnect, but she did not come back around. So Melissa, this kind of goes back to what we said, those attending our groups have never shown healthy. At times, they may not have been seen how to have a healthy place. And so I hear your heart behind this. I hear how it hurts having to remove somebody. And I have had to remove somebody from a meeting. And so unfortunately, my situation went a little bit better. They understood it, but there's going to be things that we will do as a facilitator to set healthy boundaries. And we will ultimately upset somebody, not because we did things ill-intently, just because they're not in the right place to receive it. I don't know if I'm explaining that well enough for everybody, but us modeling health is important. And so, Melissa, I want to encourage you, you shared there may be a better way. Definitely chat with your team, reach out. We have a whole lot of people on this meeting. Make a connection here, reach out to somebody, reach out to us and share what actually happened. And we can walk through that with you, or somebody can share their stories. And so that's what this is important for. I've had to remove somebody. I'm sure somebody else has. It's going to be hit or miss. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I get it. You couldn't get my attention. So that was the only way. And then they keep showing up, or it's going to be like, that really hurt me and you shouldn't have done that. And I'm no longer coming back. Deflecting is really easy for people. And so it's, I'm really sorry, Melissa, you had to experience that. But from what I'm hearing is you did what was best for the group, and which is not an easy thing to do. So I'm sorry you had to go through that, Melissa. So yeah.
And that's right. You do what you can. And remember this phrase, y'all. You can't control other people and what they do, and what they do is not your fault.
Yeah.
So you facilitate the group the best you can, and if people take that how they want it. Heidi,
Yeah.
we're up on 12:49. You want to roll that next beautiful video?
Sure, we're going to do it well. All right.
So here we're going to talk about weekly updates for the group guidelines.
During this brief video, we will learn how to introduce the support group guidelines weekly, the correct and incorrect way. Hey, y'all, welcome back. Glad everyone could make it in this week. We got a lot to cover, but before we jump in, let's just give the support group guidelines a quick look over, okay?
Oh.
Hey, remember, it's important to maintain confidentiality. It's important to respect the group boundaries and the boundaries of group members. It's important to commit to your healing and to the group. Any questions about those guidelines?
No.
Terrific. Would anyone like to share how last week worked out for them? Hey, y'all, welcome back. Good to see everyone. Hey, let's get started. This week we're talking about
Do we see why the second video might not have been the most impactful way to start? And y'all noticed in the first video, I didn't spend a lot of time on it like I did the first week. I just glazed it over as a reminder, kind of cue that memory, right? Oh yeah, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing, that kind of thing. It's really important to harken back to them every week at the beginning of the session. Yeah, Heidi?
Yeah. And guys, I have to share, I've been halfway through a group and I'm like, oh no, I didn't recap for guidelines, guys. So I'll be like full blown, and we'll pause. And I said, hey, just real quick, let's just take a couple seconds. But I've done that in the middle of a group. I'll jump in like Greg does, because if any of y'all have met me, I get really excited and I just want to get jumping in. And so there are times that I will do what Greg represented the incorrect way, is just jump right. Hey guys, it's so good to see you guys. So how was week 4 for everybody? And then I have owned it. I've taken a pause. Like, guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't start with our guidelines. And then, I circle back and then we jump back in. And so definitely the first way tends to work better, but please know that I have started like Greg because I get excited. So yeah.
And one thing I want to share about that, I had a group last year where the third session, one guy, when I said, all right, good to see everybody, just going to hit on the group guidelines real quick before we jump in. And a guy literally stopped, interrupted me and said, why do we have to do this every week? And my response was, well, we don't have to do it every week, but we're gonna. Now here's why we're gonna, and then I just kind of went through that. But I don't mind those kind of questions. If you don't understand why we're doing what we're doing, then you're not going to buy into what we're doing. So, and this guy, by the way, we talked earlier about judging. The very first session, 15 minutes in, I was like, I don't like this guy. I don't like him at all. This was a year and a half ago. And to this day, we still communicate. Turns out he just came up with a little anger up front, right? And once we got through that, so good stuff. But yeah, so is that something you guys do? Do you go over the guidelines every week? Or is that something that now that we're talking about it, you think, oh, that's a good idea, I should start doing that? Help me understand where you're at.
You guys are doing great. We love to hear from you. Let's see. Put it in the chat.
Janice?
Hi, yes. I just wanted to ask along with that, I do try and remember, I'm not always the greatest at it, but try to remember to go over the group guidelines at the beginning of each session with everyone. And usually it's a condensed version in the second week moving on. But for those that tend to come in late, do you wait until everyone is in that session before you go over the guidelines, say on week 2 or week 3? Or do you go ahead and start with the guidelines? If they come in late, you go back to what they missed to bring them up to speed with everyone in the group?
So great question. Heidi and I may be in different places on this. Every week I say, hi, how's it going, everybody? 2 or 3 minutes after start time, I say, all right, let's get started. I read the guidelines. If you're not there, then you'll come in after and we'll address that later. Heidi?
Yeah. So Melissa, if somebody is showing up late, first of all, weekly, that's a conversation. And so second of all, same thing Greg does. I always give about a minute or 2 for people to internet. Technology can be a pain weekly for people. This is our job. It's not their everyday life. And so I always give about a 2-minute grace. And then I jump in at, maybe a little bit after the hour, but I don't wait for people. I do have grace for that minute or 2, but we can't hinder the group because somebody can't make it on time. And if that is a repeat problem, that is a conversation, learning, and that may not be the best group for them to do right now. I've had that conversation with the participant. They really wanted to do the group, but I'm going to be 15 minutes late every week and this and that. And sorry, it's important that you show up on time. And so if that's something you guys are noticing, tardiness weekly, find out what's going on. But I think Greg and I are on the same page with that.
Yep. So